Well, first off, you guys all know this, but I'm Cindy Omegan from MACNY. My title is Director of Energy and Corporate Services, and this kind of falls under my corporate services piece is to hold these kinds of events. And I'm thrilled to have John Tracy here with us. He is what is your official title, John? I know you're the commercial services expert.
That's fine enough. I'm a trade specialist. Officially, I'm a trade specialist.
So John, I've known John a long time, and he has a tremendous amount of expertise when it comes to exporting and lots of good things that the commercial service has to offer us. So, this is your federal tax dollars at work.
Yeah.
So we are recording. Would ask you, since it's such a small group, I don't think you even have to mute, but if you have questions, I'm sure John would be happy to have you jump in and interrupt as we move along. So with that, John, I will turn it over to you.
Of course, yeah. Interrupt, raise it. Actually, I don't know if I'll see you when I start presenting or not. I might see you on thumbnail, so yes. Interrupt vocally rather than raising a hand because I may not see the hand on the small view there. Thanks, Cindy, for the great introduction. Sharing screen here. Not to frighten you, I only have 13 slides, 2 of which are, no, that's not the right view. Hold on. No, that's not the right view either.
We're good. We can see it.
You can see my PowerPoints?
We can. Yep. Oh. You're good.
All right, well,
as long as you can advance it, we're all set.
I've got my laptop, but I've got 2 other monitors, and it's up on my right monitor. I'm not sure if I could advance the slide. Hold on. Let me see here.
You should be.
All right. Well, there we go.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, there's only 13 slides, 2 of which are, the first slide and the last slide, which are just welcome and closing. Excuse me. So the first thing that I wanted to address or talk about, just to frame the conversation, is why is exporting important? And firstly, it benefits the country because the more you export, the better the balance of imports versus exports, the trade balance as they call it, and it contributes to our GDP. And we're selling U.S. goods and services for foreign compensation. So we're increasing our wealth outside of our borders. It benefits your company because this is very important. I think it diversifies your client base so that, when there's fluctuations to currencies or fluctuations in demand, market disruptions for whatever reason, political disruptions, which can be, wars, it helps even out your sales cycle so that you are not subject just to domestic fluctuations in the market. You can even out your business plan based on your diversified portfolio of clients around the world. And on average, this is something that you hear about all the time when people talk about the benefits of trade, that the sales grow faster and more jobs are created and supported, and typically the employees of exporting companies tend to earn more. So that's a selling point for companies when you're trying to recruit. Hey, we're exporters, which means that your wages are typically going to be higher and your job security is going to be better. And then lastly, this is one that I often expand on when I get asked to speak to college classes, which happens, international marketing classes, international business classes. I get invited from time to time to talk to them. And you wonder why the US federal government is spending time meeting with college kids. And the reason is they're our future clients. It's a good investment of time to let them know that these services are out there, because within a year or two, they'll be graduating and joining these firms that are doing international business, and they'll know of our resources. And it'll also differentiate them from their colleagues if they know of additional resources that the company was not aware of that could help expand their exports. And individual professional. You know, if any of us on the call, which I don't know, John, if you're the president or lead or owner of the company. If you're not, then you fall into this category with the rest of us. That, you know, as employees, we want to keep our resume current and competitive. And if you have international business experience on your resume, it makes you, you know, it helps ensure job security for you if you want to stay where you are. But if for some reason that you want to move, it gives you a lot more freedom if you can say, hey, I have some experience doing international business. Not a day goes by, it seems like, that companies are asking me if I know someone who has international business experience, because they need that skill set. As the market continues to grow globally for goods and services, that's you know, people with international experience is definitely growing, but it's still in high demand. You know, companies all around the region here are always looking for people with international experience. So it's really a good investment in your portfolio, if you will, your personal portfolio. So if I've made the case for the benefits of exporting, I want to talk to you about the resources that we have at the U.S. Commercial Service. And Cindy, remind me if I haven't already touched on it by the end of this to also just make a few comments about Export New York when we get to the end, because I don't want to lose this opportunity to share that information and that opportunity. So the U.S. Commercial Service is a boutique agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And you can see on the bottom of the slide here, it basically lays out U.S. Department of Commerce is a large federal agency. And when I say large, roughly 80,000 employees, huge. There's a Secretary of Commerce. Secretary Raimundo is in the cabinet as a Secretary of Commerce, and she's the former governor of Rhode Island and was very active in promoting Rhode Island internationally. So she's no stranger to international promotion. And the next tier on the tree is International Trade Administration. Under that is the U.S. Commercial Service. And I always like to say that the U.S. Commercial Service is a sort of boutique agency, not to sound pretentious, but just to describe it as being very small in the federal scheme of things. And there's roughly 1,500 employees, probably less than that at the moment, that work for the U.S. Commercial Service. And we have a singular mission, and it's to advance U.S. business interests in foreign markets. So the way we're spread out is we have domestic offices are in the field, as they say. I'm in the field covering central New York, which is roughly Watertown to Binghamton, Auburn to Utica, that kind of center stripe of New York State. But we have offices all around the country to cover the geographic landscape. And then we have, of course, headquarters down in Washington, D.C., and they're doing all sorts of things to try to keep us busy in addition to our primary mission. And then we have my colleagues, which are the real stars of the show, that are in the U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates smattered around the globe. And I have a nice, graphic here. This is our footprint around the globe. The red balloons are our primary offices, commercial service offices. The blue circles are in what I would describe as secondary markets or smaller trading nations. And in those places, we don't have U.S. commercial service staff, but in place of that, the State Department, who is the tip of the political spear running our embassies and consulates around the globe, their economic section will offer commercial advocacy in partnership with us to make sure that we have coverage in those markets. So I can't find my mouse, it disappeared. There we go. So down here in Guyana, oops, kidding. Excuse me, hold on, I gotta get back. Down here in Guyana is a blue or purple dot. They don't have any commercial services there. It's the State Department economic section. And when I worked for a chemical manufacturing company in New Jersey, we bought bauxite, which is aluminum ore, which John might be familiar with, from the Guyanese. And as part of those business trips, when I went down to Guyana, we would first stop at the embassy and meet with the economic officer of the State Department. He would give us a country briefing on everything that's going on politically and economically within the country, things we need to consider while renegotiating our contracts with the mining operations, that sort of stuff. So that's what that map represents. So these bullets here collectively are what I'm hoping to kind of cover in the next few slides. So that I include this slide not to read the slide to people, but just so that if they refer back to this presentation, it's a nice little listing of kind of what we discussed. So we have a lot of resources available to companies at the U.S. Commercial Service. The first one I want to talk about is this country commercial guides. And we have a market, what we used to call our market research library. Now the website's kind of updated and modernized. So it's not really a library like we used to have it. But all the content is still in there. So it's really search engine driven. So you have to rely on the search box on our website, trade.gov. And if you type in country commercial guides, it'll pop up a menu of all the countries that we have current information about, details like, well, it starts off with the basic demographics and natural resources and that sort of thing, and then it gets into industries, top industries, opportunities for U.S. companies, the trade landscape, meaning what are the any restrictions to trade or documents and forms required to import into the country, if there's a free trade agreement with us, financial landscape. Travel is also included because business usually leads to travel. So there any State Department travel advisories about traveling to that nation would be outlined in there. So it's just the country commercial guides are just a great resource to go to if you want to get an orientation about a country that you're considering doing business in, or even one that you've been doing business in that you want a refresher, because they are kept current by both the Commercial Service and the State Department, are contributing to those reports, if you will. They're not reports, but they're country commercial guides. But it's just a great thing to bookmark, I think, for companies that are doing international business. The initial market check was born out of another program that we have, but it's basically where a company comes to us and says, I have reason to believe I can sell my products into, I was just speaking to a woman this morning about Ghana. So let's use Ghana. I think I can sell my telecom equipment into Ghana. And I don't know much about the market. I want to verify that there's a market for me. And I also want to identify the proper supply chain channels where I would plug in. If everything comes back affirmative, that you agree, the U.S. Commercial Service agrees with my assessment that there's an opportunity there, then maybe we'll take some next steps to try to identify partners there, which is, I'm jumping ahead here, would be one of these services, the International Partner Search or GOKI service. The International Partner Search starts with this questionnaire that we ask the U.S. company to fill out. And on that, they define for us search criteria. We need somebody that can buy in minimum order quantity sizes of 20-foot container loads, someone that has warehousing capabilities, someone that has after-sales support or repairs, whatever it is the U.S. company sees as an ideal partner in that market, distributor, agent, whatever, or could even be a big box retailer in that country. So it could be it could be any of those. The U.S. company defines it for us. I send it to my colleagues that are in the U.S. Embassy or consulate in that market and ask them to conduct a search to find candidates that firstly meet the search criteria that's been given. Second, that express an interest in doing business or discussing a business relationship with the U.S. company, and that have been vetted by us, meaning that they don't have any skeletons in their closet, that they're verifiable, viable business interests in the country. So we get from a greater list, presumably, of candidates that meet search criteria, we then winnow it down to a shorter list of companies that also expressed an interest in talking to you and that we have subjectively qualified to meet with you. And that's our international partner search. And part of that international partner search, this is a callback to the initial market check that I mentioned. When my colleagues initiate a partner search, they're doing the work of an initial market check. They're first verifying that there's a market opportunity, and then secondly, identifying this supply chain structure. And from there, identifying the players in the market and thereby finding potential candidates from US companies. So the initial market check used to be part of these two, it still is part of this international partner search and the goal key I'll talk about in a second. But it's an opportunity to separate it so that if you're not sure of the market there and the market initial market check comes back negative, that they don't think it's a good time for your products in that market, then you haven't committed as far as an international partner search and goal key service when it comes to the cost. So the international partner search can be said to include the details of an initial market check, because when the report comes back with, say, 5 or 6 companies that they've pre-screened and qualified for you, they will also provide a market summary and landscape as part of the report that you get in an international partner search. And I put the prices up here, and these are for small to medium-sized enterprises, which the Small Business Administration defines as companies with 500 or less employees, which 500 employee company is a large company to me, but that's where they draw the line. If your company's larger than that, then the prices go up accordingly. They're scaled, but I can get into the details of that for anybody that needs that level of detail. The goal key service is the same process as the international partner search, except instead of just sending you pre-screened candidates that we've identified for you, it takes it one step further and invites you to that market. And we set up business meetings in person with these pre-screened qualified candidates. And my colleagues around the globe say universally, this is the best service that we have, the most exciting, and it's the one that we're most well known for. And it probably is no mystery why. The goal key service gets people in a room sitting across the table from each other. And the sooner that you get people in a room together, the sooner that business follows. So the goal key service is really the most exciting service that we have, but there's lots of reasons why you might want to do just the international partner search. Have us do the pre-screened screening and qualifying your candidates, but then pass the ball to you, and then you set up your own business trip. There's many reasons why you might want to do this. This conversation I had this morning was with a company that is a consultant, and they consult companies on market entry strategy. And I said, you could use our international partner search and then turn it into a gold key for your client. So you're adding the value of setting up a business trip. So that's one reason why they might want to use just the international partner search. Another is during this COVID pandemic, there's no travel. So we had a lot of companies that engaged in the international partner search while waiting for international travel to resume. Or you may not be prepared yet to travel or commit to travel to a certain region of the world until some other things align. So you might be considering a trade show, or you are considering a business trip to meet a client in the Philippines, and while you're there, you want to stop in Singapore to do a business meetings, and you don't know when that's going to happen. So you have us do the international partner search. We can always upgrade it to a gold key service and set up those meetings, or you can schedule them on your own. Lots of reasons why you would want to do one versus the other. Sorry, now I have to back up here. The initial market check, we talked about. The international company profile is just what it sounds like. It's a background check. So these come into play from lots of different directions. But one of the more common ones is somebody goes to an international trade show. They meet some company that says, hey, I'd love to be your rep in Moldova. And I have, I carry all these other complementary products in your industry sector, and I have an active website and an e-commerce platform, and I have, a team of 50 sales engineers. And, they say all the right things, but before you want to commit to your first order, you want us to verify that what they're telling you is accurate. You can employ us to do a background check, and there's 2 fees listed there. The first one's a light touch or shallow dive, and the other one's a deeper dive. The deeper dive is where we interview their banker, their attorneys, we do media scans, site visits, interviewing key management of the company, that sort of thing. The lighter touch is not as in depth, may not include a site visit, and that might be suitable for a lot of companies that don't really need us to interview their legal representation. So the companies that a good example of a company that uses our international company profile is Lockheed Martin here in Syracuse. When they identify new partners in foreign markets, they want to make damn sure that there's no skeletons in their closet, that they're not on any barred lists, that there's no export compliance concerns. They want to make sure they're clean as a whistle. So they employ those that police that, the federal government, to tell them that their partners that they're about to enter into business with are squeaky clean and approved by us. So they use the in-depth deep dive, that the defense contractors and security contractors like that service. But I tell companies to be shy about asking us to help vet companies, because a lot of times I get companies that say, hey, can you just tell us if you know anything about this company, and I can do some vetting right from my desk. I also have some experience with what they call red flags, things that look and smell funny, about international inquiries. And lastly, I can just simply email my colleagues in the country and say, hey, do you know ABC company? They say that they're in your city and that they do business with other US companies. But, we just want to make sure that they're known to us or known to the commercial service. And my colleagues will, if they're known, will offer that freely. And if there's anything fishy, they will usually identify it right away. And a lot of times what happens is they'll say, well, the phone number, first of all, is not a local phone number. The email, of course, is, the dead giveaway. It's a Gmail account or something. The address is fraudulent. I've had my colleagues in the country call the phone numbers that were given, and the accent wasn't that of the country that they were in. So little flags, red flags like that pop up all over the place, and they usually pop up right away. And there's no fee for that kind of thing. Anytime we go near fee-based service, when I'm talking with a client, they have well advanced notice of what we're proposing with very detailed deliverables, and a timeline, and the fee would be discussed at that time. The clients never receive I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. There's never a situation where a company comes in on Monday and gets a bill for services that were rendered on Friday. It never happens. And I bring that up because that happened in a previous professional experience and outside of this job, where we felt we were just having a rudimentary conversation. We got an invoice on Monday. That doesn't happen here. And a lot of the point I really want to drive home is that a lot of the services and resources and assistance that I provide to companies here is outside of the fee-based services. It's, if there's information, market research or market intel or details about potential US partners that is known by my colleagues when we reach out to them, then they offer it freely. It's only instances where they're like, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to do some research. That's usually when they start proposing, well, let's do an initial market check. Or maybe we take a deeper dive with an international partner search, that kind of thing. So that's how that comes up. Most of the time when a company I work with is interested in any of these services, we set up a conference call with my colleagues in that market to talk about it live before anybody's committed to anything. And those conversations are worth their weight in gold. They're always so informative because it's informal. It's a private and confidential conversation. Often, clients are like, well, I have a distributor there. It's not working out. This is all in-house. Nothing gets shared outside. So those are always really interesting when we have conference calls to talk about market entry strategy with my colleagues that are actually in the market. So, and that's under the description of non-fee-based complementary services. Again, to Cindy's comments, this is your tax dollars hard at work. So we try to make sure that we take advantage of those resources that aren't tied to fees. Okay, so we haven't gone in order. So in addition to those programs that I just described, we do offer services that help improve your performance at trade shows. And trade shows are really expensive. I mean, just to rent an exhibit space is super expensive nowadays. But the travel and the manning of the booth, because you have to have staff, and it's hard standing at a booth all day. So you have to bring lots of staff to the booth. It's just an expensive proposition. So we don't do this at all trade shows because that's not possible, but we do select every year trade shows that we support with U.S. pavilions, where we buy up floor space and delineate the space as a U.S. pavilion, and then sell off that space at a discount to U.S. companies to try to encourage them to come to the show. When we do that, there's always additional support services. There's interpreters, there's B2B matchmaking programs, there's breakout sessions, educational programming. And then oftentimes we'll have, if they're a US trade show, we'll coordinate an international buyer program, we used to call them. They're now called TEPS, Trade Expansion Promotion Program, I think is what that stands for, where we recruit foreign buyers to come to the show. And then we, of course, do a B2B with the US exhibitors. So if you're going to a trade show or considering going to a trade show, just email me or call me, and I'll tell you if we have plans to put on a program there. A lot of times when we smaller shows that we don't commit to a U.S. pavilion or an international buyer program, a colleague of mine from that industry sector, colleague or more of mine from that industry sector, or that is whose office is adjacent to where the trade show is, will have a U.S. commercial service staff at the show to walk the show, to meet with the U.S. exhibitors, to see if they can help facilitate matchmaking, that kind of thing. So if you're going to a show, chances are we have people that know about the show intimately and that are likely to be going to the show. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I can tell you exactly what our plans are for that show before you commit to it. So that's the first two bullets, domestic shows and international shows. Trade missions are, sometimes they're industry specific, sometimes they're geographically specific. And you can find out about those on our trade.gov website on upcoming events. But if you hear of one and want more details, I usually can. There's trade missions that are done all the time by politicians. There's trade missions that are done by other organizations and other federal agencies. But if you want to get to the bottom of the details of the trade show, even if it's not one of ours, I should be able to get you more details on the information on the trade. I'm sorry, trade mission, not trade show. And then we have this thing called a single company promotion, which is just what it sounds like. We can go into a market and offer you a way to promote your company to that market. The best example I can give for this is a company that that has a technology and product of cleaning and resurfacing airport runways. They were up in Watertown. They've since sold out to a larger company, international company, but they used a single company promotion for Guatemala. They had won a contract to resurface the runway at the Guatemala airport. While they were there, they had us set up a single company promotion event, which was kind of a seminar format. And we invited the ministers of interior or whoever the decision makers were for federal agencies in the neighboring countries in Central America to come see a demonstration of this technology. And basically they would clean the runway, resurface it kind of with like a driveway sealer, a little bit more high performance than a driveway sealer, and then remark it. By doing that, you extend the lifespan of that runway before it has to be broken up and resurfaced entirely. So you clean and refurbish the surface rather than having to remove the surface and replace it, which is a fraction of the cost. So you extend the life of the runway by 10 to 15 years for a tenth of the cost of replacing the runway. So of course, this is something that sells itself. You just have to get the audience in chairs, and that's what we did. We had an event at the embassy in Guatemala and invited all of these neighboring countries to send whoever's in charge of their airports to come and see a demonstration of this cleaning and resurfacing. And that launched years of project work, just driving their construction vehicles all around Central America. Then they went south. They were in Colombia, and last I had heard they were in Brazil with that equipment. So that's an example of a single company promotion that, depending on your business and how you connect to your clients, that might be of interest. So our trade.gov website has a lot of great information. I always say it's awful because it has so much information, but it's great because it has so much information. You know, I can help people get to the information they're looking for quicker if you email me or call me. But if you are interested, or if you have insomnia and are looking for a way to get sleepy, you can do the research on your own, and then whatever you don't find, call me on Monday, and I'll help you find it quicker if you hadn't found it already. But it's got all this kind of information and more. This is just a sampling of the kind of stuff that's in there. There's text content, but we also are continually adding video to this because that's such a popular media platform. So you can find videos on all sorts of international trade related topics here that you might find interesting if you're doing international business. I want to just throw in here a couple slides. Cindy and MACNY has plans for additional webinars like this one to cover different topics related to international trade. So I'm just going to whet your appetite for these. There's export financing tools that the SBA has. These are an example of some of them. I've got their link here, but they're going to do a presentation on working capital guarantees and that sort of stuff. So, you know, ways to help finance your exporting activities. Export-Import Bank is another federal agency. They have two things that I think are really interesting about the Export-Import Bank. First of all, they're not a bank, they're a federal agency. They give guarantees to commercial lenders to entice them to lend money for international transactions to companies that they wouldn't otherwise do it without the guarantee because of the risk involved. They also have international cargo insurance, or not cargo insurance, international foreign receivables insurance product that they have, which is really interesting because a lot of people, when you talk to them and they're first time exporters or even seasoned exporters, one of their things that keep them up at night is the fear of non-payment for international transactions. So you can insure that for a very small cost. It's roughly about half of 1% of the commercial invoice value, and you're covering 90% of the value of that commercial invoice for payment. So if they default on payment, you're getting your money back. It's really a slick service, but you can also get that commercially by most of the large banks will also provide a similar product, but you can get it here at EXIM. And then of course we have New York State has a trade promotion or export promotion agency, as do many of them, certainly many of the more commercial or should say commercial, more the larger industrial states will have their own export promotion agency, and ours is Global New York. And we try not to overlap, but we do have our service that they do called the EMAS, the Export Management Assistance Service, I think is what it stands for. Oh yeah, Export Marketing Assistance Service. It's right there on the slide. That's really close to our international partner search. The difference is, firstly, they don't have as large a footprint internationally. They have roughly 12 markets that they are actively helping New York companies export to. And I say markets, not countries, because, for example, Sub-Saharan Africa, all those countries are managed out of South Africa, and the UK office manages Western EU. So they have regions that they cover with some of the offices. So that's one difference. The second difference is that it's free. There's no fee for their export marketing assistance service. So you can get what is equivalent to our international partner search in those markets that New York State has a presence in for free if you're a New York State company. So I always am trying to look out for that and make sure that I don't charge somebody for an international partner search when they can get an EMAS from New York State. I've had exporters tell me that they use both at the same time, simultaneously. So they employ New York State to do a partner search for them, and they have us do a partner search, and then they compare the results. And then the ones that, using a Venn diagram, if you will, it's for visual, the ones that intersect are the ones that they go after because both agencies vetted and promoted them. So how you use their services is entirely up to you. They do have STEP, which is it's a grant program. Those funds can be used for export business development activities, including trade shows, travel, translating marketing material on your website so that it's better visible to the market that you're targeting. It could be used for training. If you have someone that you want to send to export compliance training, then you could use STEP funds for that. It's annually refunded, and at the moment the STEP funds are depleted until October 1st, where they get replenished. That's a good thing, I think, because we've spent all the money. And they can, I'm sorry, I didn't say that the STEP funds can also be used to pay for our services. So if you wanted to do a gold tier international partner search, you can tap into STEP funds to pay for our services. It's not 100% reimbursement. It's usually about a 50% reimbursement. But that's something that if you come to me and ask me for an international partner search, I'll say, hey, let's, why don't you consider filling out this form to get STEP funds for it. Why is it? Lost my mouse again, sorry. There we go. So this is my contact information. But Cindy, I asked you to remind me to talk about the Export New York program, which is another one of the webinars that you're hosting. Jim D'Agostino at CNY TDO is going to give an overview of that program. All of the topics that we've covered about international trade, all the things that you have to consider as managing your international trade, so financing and insurance and shipping and logistics, and, cultural considerations of doing business in that country, travel, did I say travel already? All the things that you need to consider when you're managing your international business is covered in this 8-session Export New York program. It's a graduate course in all manner of international business. It really is impressive. So impressive, in fact, that the U.S. Commercial Service has their Export University classes that they host from time to time around the world, around the country. That curriculum, they consulted with the developers of the Export New York curriculum to ask if they could borrow content, and that was granted for free. And it was the biggest compliment, I think, and validation of the program, that the the US federal government saw value in the Export New York syllabus to the point where they asked if they could borrow it to create their own program. The export universities are typically diluted down from the Export New York curriculum and syllabus, but the content is apparent that it's similar. So if you have interest yourself, or if you want to send somebody in your company to become an international business professional, I highly recommend this class. I do participate in it as a, I'm not even sure what people refer to me as, but I try to make all of the sessions, sit in on all of the sessions. I also present this information or content that we talked about today at one of the sessions. But I'm just a huge fan of it. It's not my program. It's not an export university program, separate from that, but it's something I believe in 100%. And I've seen so many companies be transformed by the experience. It really is just, that's the motivation for me to go, because it's exciting to see people that come in the front door, and then by the time they leave after those 8 sessions, they're already active in a new market. The whole goal is you learn everything, all the nuts and bolts that you need to know about being a seasoned international professional, but you're also during that time targeting a new market and implementing your plan. So you're developing an export plan, or expanding your expanding or updating your export plan and targeting a new market or two, and you're executing that through the process of a class session. So by the time you get to the end of it, you now have all of this huge tool chest at your disposal and new knowledge, but you're also actively using that information to try to penetrate the market. It just, I can't say enough about it. I think it's a fee-based class, but you do get a certificate at the end of it. And who cares about the certificate? What you get is an education that you take with you wherever you go the rest of your life. It's enlightening, it's interesting, it's fun, it's collaborative, because you're doing it with other companies that are sharing tricks and advice and experience, and you come out the end of it transformed. And I can't say enough about it, but I'll let Jim say more about it when he gets the tip. So like I said, I have no skin in the game. I am not getting a commission for talking about the Export New York program. I'm just I'm grateful that I'm I'm grateful that I serve the territory that it happens in. And I just have so many fond memories of all the previous classes that we've had. So that's, I'll stop talking, which I really need to do a better job at pausing every once in a while to give people a chance if they have questions, or if they want to elaborate on anything that I said, or share experiences about things that.
Well, I'm just going to interject a little bit about the Export New York program as well. Is that so I don't know if you're familiar that National Grid has grant funding to support companies that are doing productivity improvements, and they also have the same grant at a different level. Will do top line growth. If you're combining some element of continuous improvement with top line growth, it's much greater assistance than you can get with either one of them alone. And so I have, in my career, I have often encouraged people that thought they just wanted to do continuous improvement, productivity improvements, to be thinking about that top line growth, because when you do productivity improvements, you find capacity, and we don't want companies laying people off. So you combine it with the top line growth to fill in and consume that capacity. And this Export New York is one way to do that for sure. Also, some of the gold key services, et cetera, that John talked about is counts towards that top line growth as well. So it's just nice to be able to do a full program and get better assistance than you would through National Grid. That all is managed through TDO, and Jim is actually going to be doing his presentation on July 28th. So you should come listen to how that program works. It is in partnership with Syracuse University. And the thing that I think is really helpful is it comes with some help from interns who can do some research for you and that sort of thing too. So it's really a nice program. One more thing before I let John go is I wondered if you could share with us your story about, I think it was Gaylord that thought they wanted to go do work in one of the South American companies, and that was not the place to go. So you guys were able to help them figure that out.
Yeah, that's a great example of someone that perceived a market opportunity or thought there might be a market opportunity. And I think it was Peru at the time.
Was it?
And they said, we don't have any business in Peru. We'd like to do business in Peru. And we connected them with a conference call with my colleagues down in Lima, and to talk about the market opportunity there. And the guys in Peru said, this is not a good time for you, because Gaylord makes
Library
acid-free archival material. So it's folders and storage boxes and that sort of stuff that I think is acid-free. I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's stuff that is doesn't damage documents that are aging in a storage situation. So libraries, government libraries, and schools and universities are their target audience that want to store archival material safely for long periods of time. So my colleagues in Peru said, because of the political environment right now, there's no money being invested in universities and schools. So there's, the libraries that you talk about that are your target audience don't have any money. And it was a huge political issue. And they were, there was political turmoil in the country, and they couldn't wait for new elections because whoever was in the office was decimating all of their programs and education programs specifically by not funding them. So they said it's not that there wasn't a market there, but the market wasn't there at the moment. They said circle back after the election and then we can resume this conversation. But right now, don't waste your time. So it's a perfect example of saving time, using these resources to make sure you don't waste your time on a market that isn't ripe for your products at the moment. So that's a great example. The other thing that one more thing I want to say that I didn't say is that in addition to these programs and resources that I'm your conduit to, I'm also supposed to be a generalist in assisting companies in the area, and that includes export compliance. So if you ever have questions about export compliance, I may not be able, depending on how deep we get into the weeds, I don't know if I will always be able to answer the questions, but most often I can help navigate where you get the answers to the questions. And oftentimes the conversations that I have with companies are usually in the wake of a consultant who has given a presentation that included PowerPoint slides with mugshots of people that were hauled off to jail because they didn't follow export regulations properly. And that's really sensational tactics to drum up business. The reality is usually when I have a conversation with someone that's seen one of those presentations is that they probably are pretty close to covering most of their compliance requirements already with the help of their other logistics partners who are responsible to be following those same regulations. So a lot of times it's just me talking you back from the ledge and then maybe helping you plug a little holes in your compliance dike. And it's usually not catastrophic, and it's usually not a conversation that precedes jail time. So if you have questions about compliance, call me first and I can help calm the situation and then tell you if there's any corrective action you might need to take. So I'm not a guy with a badge and a gun. I'm not in export compliance and export regulations enforcement. So we can have a conversation that's not going to jeopardize you or your business.
Yeah, it's great, John. Thank you. So thank you very much, John. Lots of information there. It's nice to have this recorded so that people can go back and say, what was it he said about that, right? So appreciate.
If I misspoke on anything, I deny.
That's right. So as will be true with the following sessions that we're going to be doing around exporting, is that all of this is meant to help you de-risk doing exporting to help grow your business. So do it in wise and smart ways. And there's a number of programs out there to help you do that. So appreciate that.
Yep.
Good job. Thank you very much. And hopefully we will see you all on July 28th for Jim DiAgostino from TDO to talk about the Export New York program.